This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you discussion on PM's Mann Ki Baat. Participants are Shekhar Iyer, political analyst, and Aditi Tandon, journalist.
Addressing the nation in his Mann Ki Baat program this morning, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke at length about the recently passed agricultural reform laws. As we all know that farmers from Punjab have been agitating and also from Haryana, and they have been threatening to kind of disrupt traffic and also seal 5 national highways. After Home Minister Amit Shah yesterday told them to end their agitation and come forward for talks and go to Burari grounds for agitation, but that has not happened. I think addressing that issue today in his Mann Ki Baat, Mr. Iyer, the Prime Minister made it clear that these laws were passed after a lot of deliberation and that these reforms were long awaited. The Prime Minister also gave examples of some farmers who had recently benefited from this particular law. And basically the message that Mr. Modi gave to the people and gave to the farmers was that you need to awaken to the nuances of these laws and that you need to clear your misconceptions. Only then will you be able to put these laws to good use. What is your assessment of his remarks on this issue?
Absolutely, Aditi ji, you have actually brought out the crux of what the Prime Minister said. Basically, he was saying, look, people will have to first understand what are these laws about, why they were enacted in the first place, whom it is intended to benefit, rather than believe in a kind of a propaganda that is being fueled by some vested interest and others who are saying that the farmer will be put to a loss because he will no longer get the MSP and corporate will take over. All these propaganda thing has been building up sort an unnecessary fear, because what the Prime Minister said, look, unless you become aware with facts and with why should government do something that will harm farmers, particularly a government headed by him. So therefore he has cited instances, that immediate instance. You see, the law was enacted in September, and after that what has happened? Because essentially this is giving an opportunity to farmers, an alternative platform, an alternative option beyond the mandi system, which is guided by the APMC. Now, as far as minimum support price is concerned, it has been made several times clear that MSP remains, and MSP has been increasing every year, and government procurement continues and will continue. But what are the other things that are there? Because this is one of the law itself says protection of farmers, particularly one relating to a contract. If a produce is purchased by a buyer, within 3 months he has to give the complete dues. That is one. Second, there is no question of anything regarding the ownership of land. That is fully protected. The farmer will not lose land in any dealings. This is also very clear. Now, the basic idea is to allow for an alternative platform other than the mandi system, which will continue. The second is to allow for contract farming, so that, smaller holdings, they can come together and form an organization like Farmer Producers Organization or FPO, and then enter into a contract. So that protects that. And third is, doing away with Essential Commodities Act, which prescribes certain limits as to holding of the particular produce in the godowns by the private dealers. Now, without understanding this, what we have seen is so much of propaganda has been built and fear has been created, because after all, we know in Punjab, the people who are worried are the people who are currently managing the mandi system, and they include people who are known as artiyas, or the middle people or the middlemen, who actually buy from smaller farmers and sell it to others, or sometimes they even sell it to the big organized people who call themselves as big farmers. Now the idea is the farmers' welfare must change. As the system goes now, which is the MSP system, see, there are only 23 crops which are covered under this MSP. Of them, the maximum attention is only on paddy and wheat. And today, if you take an all India figures into account, only 8% of our farmers, rather 82% of farmers do not benefit from MSP system. They will want an alternative. Now, why is this agitation only in section of farmers in Punjab? So what is the problem of agriculture in Punjab? The basic problem is they keep on producing a particular crop because MSP is available, while the demand is not so much. And our godowns are overflowing with paddy and wheat. Because the idea is the farmers must have real-time information to produce what is in demand and get the best price. Now that has not been happening because of this trap called MSP. They produce only those crops which the MSP is promised and keep on producing that. Whereas time has come to diversify. We have already seen farmers farmers in other parts of the country have diversified to pulses.
What you are essentially saying is that it's time for diversification of the crop cycle, especially in Punjab, where the groundwater table is also depleting, and that is also a huge issue. I'd just like to bring in quickly the fact that the Prime Minister also addressed very important issue that he mentioned about a certain CEO of a farmer producer organization from Rajasthan called Muhammad Aslam, and he gave his example to the farmers who are agitating to say that this particular person, Muhammad Aslam, actually formed a WhatsApp group of a number of farmers and daily go through the prices available for crops in mandis around the area, and his own FPO is buying produce from these farmers, and so it has become an interesting collective. So what you are essentially suggesting is that talks and dialogue with the government is the way forward and not the agitation.
Absolutely, because this agitation, particularly, you see, when the Home Minister Amit Shah ji made an appeal, that is because in this cold condition, we know how cold it is, by the time it gets late night. So why should our farmers who have come from Punjab, face this kind of adverse weather? And at a time when, you see, Delhi is supposed to be going through an upsurge in corona cases. So it's a purely out of concern for these people. You move into areas where you are more secure, stay in a more comfortable place and have the dialogue. Because the idea is they should understand, because there is no understanding. He's being guided by some 500 odd organizations, and many of these organizations are not farmer organizations. Lot of them are rather more politically oriented organizations who are, carrying on this, but towards what end? See, the farmers, those who have understood, they are happy. Like, for instance, the Prime Minister himself mentioned the case of Jitendra Bhoi. Jitendra Bhoi has a very practical case where, he had sold his crop, particularly he's from Dhule district in Maharashtra. He had sown corn, and he had sold it, say, almost about 3.62 lakh worth of his corn produce he had sold. But he had just got an advance of 25,000. And those who had purchased, they were following the old habit of not paying him. So what happened was, when he realized that under the new law, all dues of the farmer should be cleared within 3 days of procurement, failing which he can lodge a complaint. So he did so, and also the subdivisional magistrate, SDM, has to take up the grievance and address it. Now, this law has empowered the farmer.
The Prime Minister made a very important disclosure this morning when he said that the National Museum was actually going to open some virtual galleries. And he also spoke with delight of the fact that the heritage and art of the Ajanta caves are being digitized and restored. Mr. Iyer, culture is a very important unifier for any country. And naturally, these developments are in a very important direction, considering COVID has made travel almost impossible and social distancing norms are weighing on people's minds. So how do you see these? Museums
play a big role, particularly when they are dealing with our ancient heritage. They tell us about the days when this country was in one of its glorious best. And that reminds us of our own proud, I would say, contributions to the world. So whether it is Ajanta cave or whether it is the return of Annapurna idol, you see, that is also very good news. That is how Prime Minister started his Mann Ki Baat today, saying that this Annapurna Devi's idol, which was stolen and taken to Canada, and that from a temple in Varanasi is now coming back. And like that, similarly, so many idols that were, stolen from temples in Tamil Nadu, which went to abroad, particularly Europe and America. They were tracked. There was a lot of cooperation between our officers and the respective countries. And then, these have started coming back. Now, what is the importance of this coming back is to realize that we can no longer neglect what is our rich past. And from that we can draw, inspiration that our culture, the culture that is Bharatiya culture, that culture has tremendous contribution, and it shows how we viewed human life and also how we viewed our environment and what is the relationship between man and the environment, because some of these reflect not just on the religious values or the ethical values of those times, but they also reflect on how this country and its civilization has progressed over the years. Mr.
Iyer, Prime Minister always uses his Mann Ki Baat to introduce the people of the country to, personalities who are contributing in their respective fields. For example, today he spoke of Jonas Massetti from Brazil, who's a teacher of Vedanta, and how Jonas Massetti, stockbroker, found his spiritual moorings, came to India and Coimbatore, learned the Vedanta philosophy and went back, and today he is offering free courses on Vedanta and has around 1.5 lakh followers of this particular course.
The work of Jonas is a very fantastic work for a person belonging to Brazil and coming here, learning about our Vedas, then learning to chant Vedas, because chanting is a very important aspect of the Veda learning. And that chanting has its own spiritual dimension, and he has, in a place called the hills of Petropolis, which is supposed to be an hour's distance from Rio de Janeiro, where he has been explaining to his students about the values of Vedanta system, and particularly the work of Sanskrit, the vast literature and lot of slokas and other chants which are there. And we have always seen on the YouTube also so many foreigners, they learn whether it is Devi Bhatyam or Chandi Path, or whether it is our Ramayana, or lot of things they learn and try to chant it in that very special style. And he has been using technology for this, which is what drawn the Prime Minister's attention, that he daily does podcasts, and then he has so far taught over 1.5 lakh students. He is also doing it in a language where people can understand. You see, that is also a very interesting thing.
It's also important that Mann Ki Baat today was on the eve of a very important festival that the country will celebrate tomorrow, the 551st Prakash Parv of Guru Nanak Dev, which falls tomorrow and which found a generous mention in the remarks of Prime Minister Modi today. And he also went back to his Gujarat days when the earthquake in Kutch had destroyed Lakhpat Gurdwara Sahib there, and how he rebuilt that Gurdwara. Mr. Iyer, I would also like you to weigh into the fact that the Prime Minister spoke of Sri Aurobindo, the great philosopher, and his Atmanirbhar, self-reliance philosophy, which is so old, and now the country is returning to that path of self-reliance. Almost every policy of the government is pitching for everybody to speak for, become vocal for local.
Sri Aurobindo always said that whatever we should learn, there is something we should learn from abroad, we should learn. He was not opposed to imbibing the good things from the rest of the world. But at the same time, he said we must encourage what can be good for our country and what is available locally. That is why he always said we must give priority to things made by our Indian workers and artisans. So that is why Sri Aurobindo always favored Swadeshi approach. And that Swadeshi approach was based on the belief that we must not forget our inherent strength. Essentially, Sri Aurobindoji's philosophy was that you must know your own inherent strength, and all the strength in this world is in you. That's a broad philosophy always sought to convey. And the Prime Minister also drew his attention that Aurobindo's views on education are also very important, because he said, look, we tend to think, bookish knowledge, degrees, diplomas add to our, value. Maybe they may help you in getting some career progression. But essentially, we must focus on training our mind as well as our heart, because no matter how much you are intellectually equipped to deal with various things, but it's also essential, we must learn to understand our mind, our thinking process, and also know that essentially the progress and development of the individual is connected to the progress and development of the society and the country. And that can come only when we appreciate our country, its values, our system, and our own inner strength.
The stress on the national education policy that Prime Minister gave today in reference to Sri Aurobindo's philosophy was important. And Mr. Iyer, also the fact that the PM mentioned about how so many alumni of important institutions of national importance like the IITs and IIMs are giving back to their alma maters. So you see, this whole philosophy of giving back to the society what you get from it, and not only thinking about what is it that I can get from others, but instead what is it that I can do for others.
The Prime Minister has been noting that in various IITs, some of the famous alumni, whether it is Sundar Pichai from IIT Kharagpur, or it is Vinod Gupta, again from IIT Kharagpur, or others who are connected with IIT Delhi or Chennai or IIT Mumbai. They have gone abroad, they have established themselves, they have patented several things, but they always are driven by the desire to do something back home.
Baba Saheb Ambedkar's death anniversary is going to be observed on December 6th, and the PM made a mention of that, asking everyone to rededicate themselves to the nuances and tenets of the Indian Constitution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were listening to discussion on PM's Mann Ki Baat. Participants were Shekhar Iyer, political analyst, and Aditi Tandon, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our website, newsonair.com. You may email your opinions about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.